Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, today was the Toronto Raptors Media Day, the long anticipated wait to see Kawhi Leonard finally speak. And before we get into everything that he said and, different things that happened, I just want to get your first reaction on just seeing Kawhi Leonard in a Raptors jersey. Like, how did it feel?
Yeah, as a Raptors fan, it's almost surreal to see such an incredible talent on the team. Whether he's going to live up to that talent or not is yet to be seen, but certainly just the absolute chills that you see. We've seen throughout the offseason, all the photoshopped pictures of Kawhi Leonard in a Raptors jersey, but to have the man there in full uniform, it's crazy.
Yeah, just seeing it live, right? You mentioned all the Photoshop pictures that, the Raptors Digest Photoshop pictures that have been stolen all over YouTube, but it wasn't the same. Just seeing him in that physical red uniform and rocking that. Did you see the white North Drake inspired uniform, the new style?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those jerseys look clean. Just seeing Kawhi Leonard in Toronto gear, it was something I was really excited for. We had that picture midway through the summer when he wasn't wearing anything Raptors, and that got me excited. But it was nothing like this. So I think all Raptors fans can agree, whether you're happy with the trade or not, it's crazy to see such a talent in a Raptors uniform. But the talk, the interviews, the press conference, it was something that was very anticipated. And there wasn't any crazy hardball questions thrown at Kawhi, but everything seemed pretty well positive coming from Kawhi's everything that he said.
Yeah, of course. We're unsure whether or not he's going to stay long term, but of course we've had, I guess speculation from all the American media sources that he wants out, but we've had talks from inside the camp to say everything's been positive this far. Talks with Nick Nurse, Masai Ujiri, Danny Green, people that know him closely, all indicating that, there's potential for him to fall in love with the city. There's potential for him to, really take a liking to the franchise, the fan base. And of course it makes sense that he's going to, he should only have positive things to say this far. He's going to have to play a season for the Raptors unless they decide to swing him around before the trade deadline for some reason. Right? So to alienate himself after all of, what transpired with the San Antonio Spurs, it makes sense. But it is really good as a fan to hear him speak in positive light of the Raptors, to hope that it will translate into him wanting to play throughout the season and to compete, most importantly.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with you. Because all the reports, especially when the trade initially happened, saying that, Kawhi is frustrated and has no interest in playing for the Raptors, to hear him come out and say that he's excited for the season and, he's ready for the year and bring a championship to the Raptors this season. The fact that he's focused and ready to play basketball, and when the reporters asked him what his first initial reaction to coming to Toronto was, he admitted he was excited because the Toronto Raptors have a very strong roster that will fit Kawhi Leonard's game, and whether the LA rumors, how much validity they have, if he really wants to go there or not, he said this season it's not going to be a breeze by year, right? Obviously Riker and I will be speculating all throughout this season and, all the way up until he either decides to leave or sign a contract extension. But the fact that he said he's focused on this year and he wants to, win now and take over wearing a Raptors uniform, that's something very exciting to see because, you mentioned that it'd be tough for him to come in here and be, talked down on the city, especially after nothing's happened and all that. But Kawhi's a quiet guy, and he could have easily been more dismissive to all the reporters and all that. But he seemed genuinely open to when people brought up his excitement about Toronto and how he feels about this season.
Yeah, for sure. His answers were brief in typical Kawhi fashion, but ultimately his excitement, his desire to play for this team, regardless if he wants to stay for another season, whether he wants to go and test the free agency, whether or not he wants to get traded by the trade deadline, he's going to have to play as hard as possible because coming off of an injury, of course there's going to be uncertainty with other teams around the league whether or not he's still the player he was prior to an injury. Of course, you never know if somebody's going to come back 100%. We look at multiple examples of that. And then also with such a weird attitude and a weird way that this whole trade was conducted, I'm sure that teams are thinking, well, what does he really want in the league? Does he want to compete anymore? Does he want some sort of bizarre fantasy that, he's not really communicating properly? He needs to go out there and prove to all the teams around the league, as I said, regardless if he wants to stay on with the Toronto Raptors franchise after this season or not, that he's a good player. So I think that this bodes or is in the favorable corner of the Toronto Raptors, because they're going to get one good season out of a superstar caliber player. Another thing that I'll ask you though is, he was asked the question about, what is his relationship now with Kyle Lowry, who is the number 2 player, obviously, on the team. We'll have another video breaking down what the media day was with Kyle Lowry. We're saying that he's probably going to be the most focused he's been on this Toronto Raptors team. And Kawhi responded, I'll really get a feel for him once we start playing on the court together, which would indicate, of course, that they haven't built that bond yet. That's as expected. They've probably had separate off seasons for the most part. How important is it for Kawhi Leonard to, one, want to stay in Toronto, but this is completely speculative, and two, and most importantly, how important is it that they build a proper relationship in order for him to have a good season?
Yeah, so the staying in Toronto factor obviously has long-term implications on the Raptors franchise, but I don't think that's a huge issue just this season. But you mentioned it. His chemistry with our top guys is going to be a key factor in us, performing on the court this season. One of the critiques that people could say about the Toronto Raptors roster this year is we've had so much continuity from our main guys the past 4 or 5 seasons, and that has led to us to have dominant regular seasons. So it might take a while for us to really mesh and mold together and create the perfect schemes with a new coach, and obviously Kawhi Leonard being on not being DeMar DeRozan and being a different player. So it's going to take a while for those things to connect, and obviously that will happen quicker if Kawhi can ingratiate himself with Kyle Lowry, his second best player, and just the rest of the roster. And there's a couple encouraging things that, in that perspective, that really came out of this press conference today. You mentioned the Kyle Lowry thing. They haven't really spoken, and obviously Kyle Lowry is going to be frustrated about the DeMar being traded, but that's a whole nother topic. And I'm sure that Kyle Lowry will be ready to win. He said he's ready to work and connect with his new best player. So I'm not too worried on that front. But Kawhi has said he's talked to a few of the players over the offseason. Apparently they've been chilling in LA. And one kind of surprise player that took people aback is his relationship with Norman Powell, who's also from the San Diego area. Apparently him and Norm are kind of close. So that might be an interesting relationship. Maybe we could see a return of Norm God with Kawhi taking him under his wing.
Yeah, if we can get a mentorship, with Kawhi Leonard to Norman Powell, and bring him to even comparable to the level he was when he was giving us his, his A game. We see players like Giannis Antetokounmpo, photo just surfaced today, him and Kobe Bryant, right? This is a generational player that you have in Kawhi Leonard. At least he was 2 seasons ago. Again, this is all, will he play at that same tier? We're not sure. But this is a generational player in terms of his commitment to the game and his ability to improve each year. So if you take a player of Norman Powell who, under similar circumstances, comes from a relatively humble beginning in the NBA, perhaps we can see him develop into a player that, we both want him to be. Especially you. You always praise Norman Powell. So it'll be interesting. Now, I don't want to sound too much like a media gossip tablet, E-News or something like that. I don't read the magazines, but we'll break down one of the weirder things that happened. I tagged you in the video on Facebook. You've seen it live. What is Kawhi Leonard broken? He's a man known not to display too many emotions, but certainly it seemed like the weirdest laugh. We'll put it on the screen, hopefully, if we have a clip of it.
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
That was one of the best laughs I've ever seen in my life. Just seeing that moment right? Because there's a bunch of tension, right? It was the first question in the presser. People are asking Kawhi Leonard what his personality is. He says he's a fun guy. He's a fun guy, and he had to come back with that phenomenal laugh. That was definitely a top 5 laugh I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, how do you think Kawhi Leonard feels being a meme?
Maybe he'll like it. Maybe the memes will break him out of his shell. I think that might be a story to watch. Memes breaking Kawhi Leonard out of his shell.
This is another question. Did you see the Dwight Howard extremely scripted when he had his media release for the Washington Wizards? He was in the conference and he had this narrative of how he went from, being a magician to a Laker, or swam through the greatest lakes just to rise like a rocket, and then eventually do you know what I'm referring to?
I did not see this.
It was this crazy. I'll have to link it to you after. It was a crazy dialogue on using puns of all the teams that he's been on, and up until his current team that he landed with. Do you think that Kawhi Leonard planned? This response just seems so incredibly ridiculous. What is your personality? I think I'm a fun guy. Do you think Kawhi Leonard thought before the media, like, hey, if anybody asks what my personality is, this is how I'm going to respond, and I'll give them a laugh? And he was just like, I need to laugh, and therefore laughed. Was it forced, or is this the sound that he makes anytime? If he's with a girlfriend, and she makes a funny joke, is this how he's going to laugh?
It seemed, you mentioned it would seem pretty wild. It seemed like a wild laugh, kind of out of nowhere. Maybe Masai Ujiri told him, get people excited, start laughing on stage, and that was his interpretation of a laugh. We don't know. We'll never know with Kawhi. I'm just excited to see him in a Toronto Raptors uniform. Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season for the Raptors. A couple of things, we kind of went off the rails there. A couple of things to clue up this podcast. Kawhi said he feels healthy. He's feeling ready to go. Masai is excited to bring everyone in there, and he's excited to play with Danny Green, Norman Powell, the whole roster. So it's going to be an exciting season for the Toronto Raptors this year.
Of course, yeah. I mean, whether it's positive or negative, we'll have a lot to talk about, a lot to watch, and it's definitely going to be one of the wildest, most unpredictable seasons that we've had as Toronto Raptors fans in the last 5 seasons, for sure. Yeah,
well, Kawhi said it best. We're going for a championship this year, and when you're shooting for that top, it's going to be a wild ride. So stay tuned to the Raptors Digest. We got a lot of news. Everything's starting to pick back up again, so subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. You're the best for listening this far. Let us know what you guys think of Kawhi's first time speaking as a Toronto Raptor. Let us know in the comment section below. You're the best.
Cheers.